Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are diving deep into the Montreal City Minutes from February 19th, 2024, and let me tell you, there's a lot to unpack.
I'm excited to dig into this with you. These minutes are a gold mine of information. They really give us a glimpse behind the curtain of how the city works.
Exactly. I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Where we find out what the city is really up to. And let me tell you, some of the stuff I found is pretty surprising. For example, did you know that for Nuit Blanche, certain bars in the Quartier Latin, the Village, and even a few spots on Saint Laurent were actually allowed to stay open later? Talk about a long night.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. It makes sense, though, considering how Nuit Blanche takes over the entire city. It's great that they're giving businesses the opportunity to be a part of it.
Yeah, and speaking of things that take over the city, the minutes also reveal some major investments in, you guess it, bike paths. Millions of dollars dedicated to expanding the network. Looks like Montreal is really serious about going green.
It's definitely a hot topic these days, and for good reason. More bike paths mean less traffic congestion, cleaner air. It's a win-win for everyone, really.
Okay, ready to talk money. Let's break down some of the biggest expenses in these minutes. First up, a significant chunk of change is going towards new equipment for the SPVM, that's the Montreal Police Service. We're talking millions of dollars here.
That's interesting. I wonder if that's in response to those recent calls for increased security measures.
It's definitely possible. Now, another big ticket item, a hefty loan for improvements to the city's water network. Those aging pipes aren't going to fix themselves.
No, they certainly are not. That's a crucial investment. No one wants to see a repeat of those major water main breaks we've had in the past.
Now get this. Buried in these minutes is something you probably wouldn't expect.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Elevator-related services.
Elevator-related services.
Yeah, the city is spending millions on them. Now, this raises the question, are we on the verge of some kind of citywide elevator crisis? Or are they just being proactive about modernizing outdated systems? What do you think?
Tough to say for sure without more context. It definitely makes you wonder about the state of some of those older buildings, though.
Right. And speaking of technology, get ready for this acronym. Oracle ERP Cloud. That's what the city has decided to switch over to for its enterprise resource planning system.
Okay, I'll admit, I had to brush up on my tech jargon for that one. But essentially, it's like the central nervous system of the city's operations, right?
Exactly. Managing everything from finances and HR to even citizen services. It's a pretty big deal, and it suggests that Montreal is making a serious push towards digital transformation.
And hopefully that translates into a smoother, more user-friendly experience for all of us who rely on those city services. Think online payments, permit applications, all that fun stuff.
Now let's talk real estate, because there are some fascinating details in these minutes about a land swap between the city and, get this, the Montreal Science Center Foundation. We're talking prime real estate here, folks.
Ooh, that is prime real estate. I wonder what they have planned for that space. The Science Center is already a major attraction, so whatever they do is sure to be exciting.
It really makes you wonder, right? And if you thought parking was just a daily struggle and not a matter for city minutes, think again. It turns out the city's buying a piece of land specifically for a public parking lot. Parking in Montreal, always a hot topic.
Always a hot topic. It's interesting, though, because it shows that even with all the talk about sustainable transportation, the city still has to grapple with the reality of car dependency. It'll be interesting to see how they balance those competing priorities moving forward.
Okay, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the human side of these minutes. We're talking about real people raising their concerns and sharing their experiences with the city. And trust me, there are some passionate voices in these pages.
That's what I love about these minutes. They're not just about numbers and contracts. They're about the people who make up this city.
Absolutely. For instance, we've got residents raising concerns about everything from homelessness and the need for more affordable housing to the lack of green spaces in certain neighborhoods.
These are issues that affect all of us, and it's encouraging to see people engaging in the political process, making their voices heard.
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting? There's a whole debate going on about a new regulation called the Règlement pour une métropole mixte. Essentially, it aims to promote more affordable housing in new developments. Sounds great in theory, right? But some people are questioning whether it's actually effective. They're saying it's not doing enough to address the root causes of the housing crisis.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's one thing to have a policy on paper, but it's another thing entirely to make sure it's actually working in practice. And speaking of making things work, the minutes also highlight a report from the Commission sur le développement social et la diversité montréalaise, which is a mouthful, but basically it's a commission focused on social development and diversity. And one thing that really jumped out at me from their report was their emphasis on the importance of engaging young people in this city. They're not just the future, they're the present.
That's such an important point. And it's not just about listening to young people. It's about giving them a seat at the table, making them an active part of shaping the city. Okay, so we're back in the minutes, and let me tell you, this next bit is cool. Remember that land swap deal we were talking about with the Montreal Science Center? Well, it turns out they're using that land for a very special project.
Okay, you've got my attention. Spill the beans.
All right, so get this. The city is commissioning a brand new piece of public art for Parc des Guéris.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Parc des Guerrilles could definitely use some more art. What kind of art are we talking about here?
Well, the piece is called Coexistence les embranchements fructueux, and it's going to be amazing. But the best part,
Okay, now you have to tell me the best part.
they're really involving the community in the whole process. They're bringing in local artists to collaborate and make sure it really reflects the spirit of the neighborhood.
I love that. It's so important to have that local touch, that sense of ownership.
And speaking of ownership, guess what else we found? The minutes go into great detail about one of those bike path loans, laying out all the nitty-gritty details in a whole bylaw dedicated to the project.
Wow, they really want to be transparent about this, huh?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's all there in black and white, how the money's being used, how the project will be managed, the whole 9 yards.
It's refreshing to see that level of transparency. It
Right.
really builds trust with citizens.
Okay, ready for our next deep dive discovery.
Hit me with it.
So we found this super interesting section about the Marché Bon Sucre.
Yeah.
You know, that historic building right on the waterfront?
Of course. It's iconic. What's going on with the Marché Bon Store?
Well, they're bringing in a new tenant, and it's not your typical shop or restaurant. Apparently, a group called Ecotone Space Experimentation snagged a long-term lease agreement for a space in the market.
Ecotone Espace d'Experimentation. That doesn't ring a bell. Who are they?
I had to look them up, too. It turns out they're a nonprofit focused on, get this, urban agriculture.
Urban agriculture. In the Marché Bon Sucre. Now, that's an interesting combination. Tell me more.
Right. I thought the same thing. So basically, they're all about promoting sustainability, growing food locally, even within a city setting.
That's amazing. Urban farming is so important, especially as we think about creating more resilient cities. What are they going to be doing in the Marché Bon Sucre?
Well, according to these minutes, they're talking rooftop greenhouses, composting systems, even a grain elevator. It's like they're transforming this historical landmark into a model of urban farming.
That's such a cool idea. It's like blending the old with the new, showing that even in a historic space, you can still embrace innovation and sustainability.
Okay, now for something a little different. We also found a section dedicated to combating anti-Semitism in Montreal. It's a serious issue, and it's clear from these minutes that the city is taking it very seriously.
It's good to hear they're addressing it head on. What kind of measures are they taking?
Well, for one, they're creating a dedicated police unit to investigate hate crimes, which is a great first step in ensuring accountability and justice. They're also establishing a new commissioner's office focused on tackling all forms of racism and discrimination.
That's encouraging. It's important to have those resources in place to support marginalized communities.
Agreed. And hopefully this will create a safer, more inclusive environment for everyone in Montreal. Okay, ready for a later topic after that?
Please tell me something uplifting.
All right, get this. The Montreal Science Center submitted a very special request to the city.
Let me guess. They need more money for their next big exhibit.
Nope. They need a taxidermied passenger pigeon.
They need a what?
A taxidermied passenger pigeon. Can you believe it? Apparently, they need it for their upcoming exhibition on extinct species.
Well, that's a new one. I guess when you're dealing with extinct species, you've got to go to some unusual lengths to get the exhibit just right.
Exactly. Okay, let's shift gears to something a little more down-to-earth trash.
Trash, as in garbage.
You know it. These minutes have a whole report outlining Montreal's plan to reduce its environmental impact. They're investing in electric buses for the city, building new electric vehicle charging stations, and really pushing for people to choose greener ways to get around.
It sounds like they're really going all in on sustainability. It's about time. Cities have a huge role to play in combating climate change, and it's good to see Montreal stepping up.
Agreed. Now, before we move on, we can't forget about our furry friends, can we? Because guess what else is in store for Montreal? A brand new dog park.
Ah, that's awesome. Where is it going to be located?
Well, the minutes specifically mention a neighborhood that's been lacking green space for a while, which is even better. Everyone deserves a little slice of nature, right?
Absolutely. And you know how much dog parks can revitalize a neighborhood? It's a win-win for everyone.
All right, we're back with more from the Montreal City Minutes, and this next part is a little bit, well, let's just say it involves the world of ones and zeros.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the city's digital side up to now?
Cybersecurity. It turns out they're putting a lot of effort into beefing up their defenses against cyber attacks. We're talking new software, employee training, the whole shebang.
That makes sense, though. Cities are increasingly becoming targets for hackers. Think about all the sensitive data they manage, personal information, financial records, infrastructure systems. It's a big responsibility.
Absolutely. And speaking of responsibility, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, property taxes. Because guess what? The minutes have a whole section dedicated to them.
Oh boy, property taxes. Always a fun topic of conversation. What's the city saying about them?
Well, the long and short of it is that the city's expenses are going up, but they're hesitant to raise property taxes significantly.
It's a tough spot to be in. On one hand, the city needs revenue to fund essential services. But on the other hand, nobody wants to see their property taxes go through the roof.
Exactly. It's a balancing act, for sure. And speaking of balancing acts, the minutes also give us a peek into the city's budget deliberations. Should they put more money towards public transit? What about affordable housing? There's so many competing priorities.
Trying to allocate resources effectively is one of the biggest challenges any city faces. It's about setting priorities and making tough decisions.
And sometimes, it's about thinking outside the box. Remember that discussion we were having earlier about alternative modes of transportation? Well, there's this tiny little detail in the minutes, almost easy to miss, that suggests that the city is starting to seriously rethink the role of cars in Montreal's future.
Now, that's interesting. What kind of detail are we talking about?
It's not a specific plan or anything, more like a subtle shift in language. Almost like they're planting a seed for a larger conversation about what a less car-dependent Montreal might look like.
That's significant, though. It shows that they're at least open to exploring new ideas, new possibilities.
Exactly. And that's what I love about these city minutes. They're not just about what's happening today. They often give us clues about what might be coming down the road.
It's like getting a sneak peek into the city's thought process.
Exactly. Well, that pretty much wraps up our deep dive into the Montreal City Minutes for this week. We covered a lot of ground today, from bike paths and public art to cybersecurity, and yes, even property taxes.
It just goes to show that these minutes are about so much more than just dry bureaucratic procedures. They really offer a glimpse into the heart of what makes Montreal tick.
Absolutely. So next time you're feeling disconnected from your city, remember those city minutes. They're full of stories, debates, and decisions that shape our everyday lives. And who knows? You might even stumble upon something truly surprising. Until next time on The Deep Dive, keep exploring.